You know those feelings you'd rather just not feel? Well, what if those difficult, uncomfortable emotions aren't actually the enemy? In this explainer, we're going to dig into a totally new way of thinking about them, not as something to get rid of, but as something to understand.
I mean, have you ever just wished you had an off switch for feelings like anxiety, sadness, or anger? You know, the power to just, poof, make them disappear when they show up uninvited? Yeah, pretty sure we've all been there.
But here's the crazy part, the paradox we're diving into today. What if all that effort, all that trying to push those feelings away, is the very thing that's keeping you stuck?
So this brings us to what's called the emotion trap, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's that super common but ultimately self-defeating strategy of trying to avoid or suppress what we're feeling on the inside.
I mean, just think about it for a second. Fighting your own emotions is exhausting, right? All the energy you pour into that internal tug of war is energy you can't use for the stuff that truly matters. Your goals, your work, your relationships. And in the long run, this whole avoidance game, it doesn't just not work, it actually ends up making us feel even worse.
Okay, so where do you even start with all this? Well, think about it like building a house. If you want to build anything that's going to last, you have to start with a solid foundation. And for our emotional lives, that foundation is, you guessed it, understanding. Because at the end of the day, you can't change what you don't understand. It's just that simple.
And this is where we get a major reframe. What if all those so-called negative emotions aren't your enemies at all? What if they are actually essential messengers? A really sophisticated warning system that's designed to give you vital information. All right, let's take fear, for example. It's basically nature's built-in alarm system. Imagine you're crossing the street and a car suddenly comes speeding toward you. That jolt of fear is what makes you leap back onto the sidewalk without even thinking. That's not a bug in your system, that's a life-saving feature.
And what about sadness? Well, it's a signal that we've experienced a loss. You know, after a breakup or losing a job, sadness kind of forces us to slow down, to process what happened. It's this quiet, powerful reminder that what we lost really mattered to us. And it's a signal to other people that, hey, we might need some support.
And we can do the same thing with anxiety. You know, it's so easy to dismiss it as just pointless worry, but it's really a future-focused emotion. That nervous energy you get before a big presentation, that's your brain saying, hey, this is important. Let's get ready. It's literally what motivates us to prepare and do a good job.
Anger, man, it gets such a bad rap, doesn't it? But it's the totally natural response to injustice. Let's say you find out your phone company has been sneaking hidden fees onto your bill. That flash of anger is what motivates you to call them, to stand up for yourself, and to protect your boundaries. It's useful.
And then you've got guilt and shame. These pop up when we fall short of some standard we hold. Like if you forget to pay a friend back, that little pang of guilt is what pushes you to make it right, to apologize. These feelings are actually powerful tools for self-correction and for keeping our relationship strong. Okay, I get it. That all sounds great in theory, right? But if these emotions are all so helpful, then why do they sometimes feel so huge, so overwhelming that they just kind of take over and stop being productive at all?
Right, this is where we get super practical. To make a big, intimidating feeling feel less overwhelming, we need to break it down into smaller pieces. We can actually decode that big, fuzzy cloud of feeling by looking at the parts it's made of.
And here's the thing. It turns out that any emotional experience, no matter how big and scary it feels, is really just made up of 3 distinct parts. Just 3.
So first up, you've got the thoughts. That's the story you're telling yourself about what's happening. Then you've got the physical sensations, what's literally happening in your body, like your heart racing. And finally, you have the actions, what you actually do, or at least feel the urge to do.
But here's the key. These 3 parts aren't just sitting there by themselves. Nope, they actually feed off each other in this incredibly powerful cycle that's called the emotional feedback loop. Let's see exactly how it works. Let's walk through a perfect, super relatable example to see how this works. Picture this. A man is in a hurry, running to catch his bus to work.
So, as he gets to the bus stop, what's the first thing he notices? The physical stuff from running, right? His heart is pounding, his breathing is heavy, maybe he feels a little dizzy. Now, at this point, these are just neutral facts. His body is just responding to exercise.
But then comes the thought. His mind jumps in, interprets these physical feelings, and spins a story. I'm going to have a panic attack if I get on this crowded bus. Boom. He's just slapped a label on those feelings. He's decided they're dangerous.
And you guessed it, that scary thought leads directly to a behavior.
In response to the feeling and the scary story his mind just told him, he decides to avoid the bus completely and just walk to work instead.
And this is the trap. This is so important, because in that moment, walking away feels great. It's instant relief. But what's the long-term result? His brain learns a really powerful lesson. The bus is dangerous, and avoiding it keeps me safe. The fear doesn't just disappear. It actually gets stronger.
So once you understand this feedback loop, it opens up a whole new way of doing things. Instead of automatically fighting or running away from our feelings, we can choose to respond differently. We can actually listen to the message the emotion is sending us without having to blindly obey its command to just run for the hills.
You know, this all boils down to a fundamental truth. And this quote just nails it. Emotions are hardwired into us. Even if we wanted to, we'd be unable to push them away completely. What this means is that acceptance isn't about giving up or being weak. It's actually the most logical, most effective strategy you've got. So when we really get the purpose of our emotions, and we see that feedback loop for what it is, we suddenly have the power to change our whole relationship with them. So I'm going to leave you with this question to think about. What is one emotion trying to tell you right now that you've been ignoring?